Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Matt, and today we are brewing an English Best Bitter. We are also live streaming this brew day on YouTube, so feel free to check out the stream archive. I will link to that in the information section down below. We are first going to go over the Beersmith 3 notes, and then we will go over the brew day. So we're going to go ahead and get started.
Now to go over the recipe in Beersmith 3, I first designed this recipe as a 5-gallon recipe, and then I reduced it using the scale recipe function in Beersmith 3 to reduce it to 3.5 gallons. I'm using 3 different types of malts, 2 different types of hops, and then I'm using London Ale III Wyeast. I'm trying to use as much English ingredients as I can to stay true to the style. For my malt bill, I'm using Marris Otter, which is English 2-row, Caramel 120 for sweetness, and biscuit malt for the biscuit flavor, which is key in the style. For the hops, we're using East Kent Goldings, which is going to give you spicy and citrus notes, and the Fuggles for bittering and aroma can provide woody and earthy notes. The water is built 2-to-1 for sulfate to chloride. This is important because we're using the Fuggles as our bittering addition, and the Fuggles has a very low alpha acid, so we're going to try to bring out the bitterness in this beer by doubling the sulfite to chloride ratio. And really this can even go 3-to-1, I'm thinking too, so I'll leave that up to you. And then for the yeast, we're using London Ale III, which is just a traditional London yeast. It's a true top cropping strain, and it should provide a light and fruity palate as well. I can go over the next few pages too. So for the starter, I am not going to make a starter for this because it only requires 118 billion yeast cells, and a pack provides like 100 billion yeast cells, so you're talking about like 18 billion, which is not that much. Not enough to justify a yeast starter, so I'll just be pitching the pack of yeast. And then for the water, I'll just show the target profile as well. So again, we're using 2-to-1 sulfate to chloride, and the rest of it's pretty standard. Next, we're going to go into the brew day. First, we collect 5.6 gallons of distilled water and get ready to build a more hop-balanced profile. We collect 4.73 grams of calcium sulfate, 4.16 grams of magnesium sulfate, 3.36 grams of canning salt, 0.1 grams of calcium chloride, 2.83 grams of calcium carbonate. Once the salts are added and dissolved, we mash in. After doughing, we stir the mash to break up any dough balls. We plan on holding a mash temp of 150 degrees for 50 minutes. After 10 minutes, we take a pH reading. It's hard to tell exactly where this is, but it seems close enough. After around 50 minutes, we start the mash out at 170 for 10 minutes, then we start draining out the grains. Next, we ramp up to boiling temperature. Once the wort is starting to heat up, we can press the grains to remove as much wort as we can. After pressing the grains, we end up with around 5.3 gallons. Our pre-boil gravity reading comes out to around 8.7 bricks, which comes out to around 1033 corrected gravity after running this through my refractometer calibration. Our target was 1039, so we are under target by quite a bit, so we can just adjust with some DME. We measure out around 0.7 pounds of DME, which we will add with around 15 minutes left of the boil. Once the wort reaches a boil, we add 1 ounces of Fuggles for 60 minutes. We start recirculating the wort with around 20 minutes left of the boil to sanitize the pump, lines, and chiller. At 15 minutes remaining, we add Irish malts and Fermax yeast nutrient. Additionally, we add 1 ounce of East Kent Goldings and the DME. After the boil, we start running cold water through the plate chiller to start rapidly chilling the wort. Once the wort is chilled to around 70 degrees, we can move the wort into the fermenter. Next, we aerate the wort with a stir drill stick attachment. We measure out the standard gravity, which comes out at exactly 11 bricks, which measured out to around 1043, which is pretty close to our target. Lastly, we pitch our London Ale III Wyeast from Wyeast. The fermentation chamber has another beer in it, so we ended up just putting this upstairs for around 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, we get ready to rack the beer over into the keg. We prep the keg by filling it with Star San and pushing the sanitizer out of the keg with CO2 to ensure that we can do a low oxygen transfer. I have a video on this if you're interested at all, which I will link in the video description. After we fill the keg up with CO2, we can start moving the beer over to the keg. Our final gravity measures out to around 1012, which was on target. The ABV measures out to around 4.1. So here we are with the English Best Bitter. I really like how this beer turned out. I'm definitely going to be brewing this again. I'm nearly halfway done with the keg, so we're going to have another brew day here pretty shortly, I think. Overall, it was a great brew day. I'd say the only hiccup we had, well, really we had 2 hiccups during the brew day. We had an issue with my power strip. My power strip ended up burning up during mid-brew day, so we got rid of that. And you'll see that if you do watch the live stream archive on the YouTube channel. I did do a live brew day for this beer, so you can probably peruse around that and see that clip. But yeah, it's like a 4-hour video, so it's a long one. And then as far as my gravity goes, I did miss my gravity by a little bit. It wasn't too bad. If you've been watching my channel for a long time, you'd probably notice a theme of missing my gravity. And it's something that I've been battling with for a long time. I have control over pretty much my entire brew house except like pH. I don't have a good measure on pH because I'm just using pH strips. And for grain crush, I pretty much rely on my homebrew supply store. So I think it's my grain crush. I asked them to double crush it, but I don't know if they do. And if they do, it's just not a very fine crush. So I'm going to continue to monitor the situation like I always do, and someday I might end up buying a mill just because missing my gravity kind of sucks every single time. It costs money for the DME, so it's just an additional expense. Besides that, I used yeast nutrient for the first time in this brew day. I know it's probably might be surprising for someone who's brewed for so long as I have, and I haven't never used yeast nutrient. But I did end up buying some. I figured it's really cheap. Why not, give it a try? So I did use Fermax yeast nutrient. I did. I don't know really if it made an impact or not because I don't plan on making a beer side by side, one with the yeast nutrient, one without yeast nutrient. I can only assume it worked well since it did ferment my beer to the calculated final gravity. So in the future, I will be using this Wyeast beer nutrient. So I just know this brand. I'm comfortable with it, and the directions are very clear as far as how much to add. So I'm gonna probably stick for this Wyeast nutrient for the rest of my brew days. But yeah, besides that, like I said, really enjoy the beer, and I think I'm definitely gonna brew this again. So next, we're gonna go over appearance, aroma, mouthfeel, and flavor. As far as appearance goes, I would say it's a pale amber color with moderate clarity, not perfect clarity, but it's definitely good. You can't quite read through it, so I guess you can't say it's like super clear, but clarity is moderate. I would say it's like a moderate off-white head as well. It does linger pretty long for the head as well. As far as aroma goes, it has like a moderate malt aroma, low caramel. It does have like kind of like a mild fruity note as well. I'm trying to pick up on the bitterness, like the hop aroma, but I'm not really picking it up. I think if anything, that's probably the biggest flaw with this beer, is that this really needs a healthy dry hop, I think, because it just doesn't have a lot of that hoppy note to it. It's definitely more malty and fruity, I would say. As far as the mouthfeel is concerned, yeah, it's like a light to medium light body mouthfeel. So it's yeah, it feels good. Lastly is flavor. I'm really trying to pick up on the bitterness on this. If anything, up front, I don't really taste any bitterness. The only bitterness I'm really getting from this is there is a slight piney note to it on the aftertaste, and it kind of lingers. But besides that, that's really the only bitterness I'm picking up on it. It has low fruity esters, and it definitely has a sweet malty flavor. One of my favorite things about this beer is there's a biscuity, bready note, and that's probably from the Victory Malt. That is really, really pleasant. It's probably one of my favorite parts of the beer is the biscuity, bready note you get, and it's right on the finish on this beer. It's really, really great. But besides that, I mean, that's about all I can really taste on it. Like I said, I'll definitely brew this again. I just think it needs to be a little bit more bitter up front, and the aroma needs to, the hops need to make a presence in the aroma as well. Now, this isn't an IPA, so this is just an English Best Bitter, so you don't want it to be too hoppy. But as of now, you're really picking up on like fruity and malty notes, where bitterness is kind of taking, the hoppy flavor is really taking a sideline on this. But besides that, I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel, and feel free to comment on in the section down below. I read all the comments. I'm on YouTube every day, so if you comment, I will probably be reading it within 8 to 10 hours, and I usually respond to all my comments. So feel free to comment. But besides that, there will be more Grain to Glass videos coming. If you like them, like I said, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks, guys.